Alright, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? Jason Demakis coming at you live via the power of the internet and consciousness in combination for another episode, or webisode, if you will, of Concepts of Consciousness. Today is the 24th of September, 2014, and we've got quite a few people on deck today, more guests showing up than we had planned. From left to right on the bottom of your screen, we have Alex, we have Jamie, we have Laura, Robin, Roman, and Terrence was with us, per usual, but he had to duck out early today. So we would just like to say thank you and welcome to the newcomers. It's awesome that you guys could take the time today to join us, and we really appreciate it. More added extra insight, the better for everyone, more learning and growth experiences. All right, I would just like to take a moment, per usual, to thank my co-supporters from the Universal Beat Clothing and ExpandingConsciousness.com for supporting the mission since day one and spreading concepts of consciousness. And today is going to work a little differently. Instead of starting with the usual 10-breath meditation routine, we're going to kind of just bring up a topic. And since we have a lot of people speaking today, we're just going to try and move through things so everyone can get their 2 cents in. But we're going to start with the topic of synchronicity today, what it means to each of us, if we had to define it. And then if we experience synchronicity, different types of synchronicity, the craziest synchronicity you've ever had, coincidences that are just too improbable to be just by chance. So why don't we start with Alex? Alex, man, why don't you give us your definition of what a synchronicity is, and if you've experienced anything like tremendous in your own life in regards to synchronicity.
So the way I kind of just describe it is like predestiny, or the universe flowing together and putting things in the right place. And I'm a fairly spiritual person. Like Deepak Chopra, my first spiritual experience was with LSD back in the beginning of 2013. That kind of led me on into a journey. I personally have I became a Muslim at the end of 2013 after all that, but I think to each their own, and it's almost it's almost this similar, whether it's Buddhism or whatnot. It's all kind of like the same message of oneness, and that there is a spiritual aspect to life, not just physical, and that things I used to be an atheist, kind of like out of cynicism for all the ridiculous Rick Santorum type people who don't even need to go in there, but I think they really do a disservice to the whole entire notion of spirituality, and using like this really aggressive creationism and stuff like that, when really science is just from this design of the spiritual realm and everything like that. So they're really disregarding what is, and they're all lunatics anyways. But the notion of synchronicity is inherent, whether it be Buddhism or Islam or all different kinds of spirituality. Is positive spirituality is that the universe works in ways that kind of just brings things. I mean, I do believe that there's duality between free will and predestiny. We're not, we can change the world and we can do things, but on that road there are things that are just meant to happen, that are there to teach us lessons. And I've undergone them in so many different facets, especially within activism, and just things that have happened that I feel like that are there to strengthen my spirit, strengthen myself. Like, for example, like I worked with Free and Equal, and we did this, United We Stand festival back in May in Los Angeles, and we were trying to, like, compromising is not an option to us. But what happens with revolutionary movements is people try to co-opt it. We were approached by someone who wanted us to take a sponsorship from a bank like Wells Fargo or U.S. Bank, and then have a banking executive speak on stage, because they would be the bank of the people. Now, my first thought was like, yeah, let's do it, because it'll probably be like the Dawn of the Dead scene where they're like tearing out his insides and everything like that. because we got like Immortal Technique and all these like journalists like Abby Martin and stuff like that. Like he wouldn't last a second on there. But at the same time, you know, aside from the joking aspect of it, I think it was there just to open my eyes, just like just how important this is and just how vulnerable it is for someone who sees this and feels like, I don't want this to happen, to come in and try to dilute it. So we ended up saying, no, please don't associate with us anymore. Then he's like, oh, okay, well, what about this? How about this? Like, and then it's a alternative energy company that happened to have Colin Powell on their board of directors. I'm like, all right. I think things like that are meant to happen just to I think I learned things from that, and then also just things in life, you know, with friends or you know, just kind of different things that, in hindsight, I feel like, you know, are there to teach me a lesson about, you know, like, you know, I used to be extremely introverted and shy, but, you know, meeting certain people or encountering with my friends and learning that it helps me strive towards balance in my life. Like, you know, I do think that introversion is a good thing because it helps with self-reflection and growth. But if you're a hermit, you're never going to take the chances to receive the benefits of life because you're too afraid of the failures. But failure is a good thing. But you know, if you never take that chance, you'll never receive the good aspects of it. So I've kind of broken through that shell and been able to find that balance between being outward but also being cautious, because you know there are dishonest people out there. We can't be on either side of either extreme, which is complete extroversion and not being, you know, defensive towards people who would take advantage of you, or being completely introverted and not taking a chance on people that are good and honest and deserve, you know, your time and energy and your friendship and everything like that. So it's just all of these different things, whether no matter what aspect of my life it's about, I feel that it kind of happens for a reason to make me stronger as a person and be able to navigate in life better and be able to go forward and look for these signs and so I feel like certain things, those did happen for a reason. That was like you know, synchronicity. I don't believe it was by chance at all.
Very interesting stuff, man. I like the examples, the personal examples you gave there. That was good stuff. I agree with just about everything you said. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any contrast between what everyone else has to say and what we all feel. But Jamie, what does synchronicity mean for you? And have you ever experienced anything like wildly improbable that was too crazy to be a coincidence? Like the timing was just too nuts.
Okay, good timing for you to call on me because I was just writing down what I was going to say. Okay, so I am following my dreams to be an actress. I'm moving to LA in 3 weeks. Really excited. And as far as synchronicity, so like all of my childhood years were filled with self-esteem issues and trying to find myself. I felt like I had a lack of identity. What else did I write down? I would jump around like through different jobs and like different friends, and I would say I was a follower, and it was in order to observe what other people do and stuff like that, and it all led to me realizing that I want to be an actress because I've been studying psychology and I've been studying spirituality and like being able to see where I fit into the world as far as like who I am, how do other people see me, and that way I would know what kind of characters I could portray that are believable, stuff like that. So it all ties in. And I was thinking, if none of these bad things that happened to me when I was younger that invoked all these negative thoughts and feelings about myself, I wonder if I still would have wanted to be an actress. And I think I probably still would have, but I would have been a completely different approach. It would have been maybe like a cockier approach, like I want to be a star kind of thing, where now it's like a more artistic approach to it. So I think that either way I'd probably want to be an actress, but this way that it really did happen kind of helped me find my way back to it. because I was in modeling school in 5th grade and I loved it. But then my friends started saying that I talked about it too much and they didn't like hearing about it. So then I just like repressed that and kind of forgot about it. Like, oh, people don't like when I talk about that. So I just didn't really think of it as an option anymore. So, and then that's what started all that. So it's kind of interesting to me to think that I probably would have found my passion either way, but this way I'll probably be a better actress because of everything I've gone through and all of the experiences I've had.
That was awesome. I liked the part where you were talking about how you think you would still end up following your passion, but it would just be in a different way. I jive with that a lot too. It's a very interesting subtopic to think about how subtle the changes can be, but how, you know, if your passion is focused enough, you're probably going to move in that direction. Whether or not, you know, you're this type of person, that type of person, your passion is going to move you in that direction. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Laura, did you want to speak for a moment about synchronicity? Have you ever had anything that's been really highly coincidental but improbable and like beneficial? That's just like, wow, this is nuts. Like, how did this never happen?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much happens on a daily basis for me. So I have a lot, but I'll try to think of something that's like short and sweet. But I recently just came back from living in Switzerland for a little bit, and it was a dream of mine to live there for the last, I was planning it for the last 6 years to go. And then once I graduated school, I just booked a one-way ticket, packed my bags, and left. And I just didn't want to go down the path of like going to grad school and the whole like 9 to 5 and settle down, and that just is not me. And a lot of people think or thought that it was insane for me to go, not only just to like step out of that like we have to settle down thing versus, and plus also going out there by myself. But when I was younger, I always was very sensitive to energy, but I guess I didn't realize it when I was younger. So I had a lot of anxiety issues because I didn't understand where all this energy was coming from. So as I was getting older and like more into my spiritualness, you know, then I met coaches and mentors and other empaths, and so now that I'm more comfortable with it, I know, like, okay, I have to really listen to my intuition. So when synchronicities happen for me, I'm like, all right, I gotta listen to it because it's something's telling me to go. Either if it's like telling me not to do something or to do something, I listen to it 100%. As crazy as it sounds, but I guess the thing is for me was like, all right, I'll do this one because it's insane. But I flew to Switzerland. My friend was having an event in LA, and he was like, you have to come, and I was like, I'm in Switzerland, dude. Like, are you kidding? I was like, I don't have the money. I was like, that's a hell of a long flight. And I was like, I thought about it for like, I slept on it, and I said, screw it, I'll just do it. So I booked a flight for a weekend. I flew from Switzerland to go to LA for a weekend. I literally got there Thursday, left Sunday. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. I needed it. And then it was crazy because I met this girl who I was telling her, like, I'm a blogger and whatever, I want to start my life coach business, blah, blah, blah. She's like, oh my God, you have to meet my sister. She has a successful blog and business. That's what she does. She coaches people to build their businesses. So all in all, fast forward, I'm working with her now. So that's why I told my parents or my friends, I was like, I feel like I have to go to this event. Like, I have to go. There's something telling me I have to go. So it's just amazing how synchronicity works because it's unreal. But you have to just listen to it.
That was an awesome story. I think others will agree. That's actually really awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty much the epitome of, I think, what we're talking about is just that trusting your intuition and knowing that that's like that magnetic compass that's telling you to go this way. and you have that like whole like lower mind higher mind duality where your intellectual side's like, nah, you can't afford that, you need to have this money for this time and be timely on your payments and responsible, but then that you have that other irrational part of your mind that is just like, go here, like it's just like, do this now, it's almost like come with me if you want to live type logic, like just go this way. And the more you trust it, the more it will prove to you, the more you'll prove to yourself that you do already have a very strong connection to creation or whatever you want to call it. Yet trying to bar any specific religion or affiliation here, but like source or connectivity or anything. Even if you do believe in religion, I do think that there's common threads there, that it's kind of like the reality of reality. Like I always say, it goes deeper than any human interpretation could ever do it justice. And we all have our own unique expressions of that. And it's almost like every human individual is like their own like living religion. You're like a temple of unique thoughts, feelings, experiences, and then you have this opportunity to be completely unique for a sliver of time. In the term of like cosmic timetable, like a human life is like literally like that. It's so ephemeral, and we have this scaled down, dialed back, culturally infected interpretation of reality where we think that we have to do things a certain way, or we have to. It's all these unique individual pieces being literally like whittled down to be like similar shapes, and it just dulls everybody down. Society is dull, patterns become dull, people become restless, and then we had this discussion last time, I won't go off on a tangent, but about how we I think Jamie and I were spitballing back and forth about how we think that's what causes like midlife crises, is that like psychological repression of like years of doing something that you're not really too passionate about, but it pays the bills, and your family accepts you because of it, or society tips their hat to you because you do this job, and you're a taxpayer, but on the inside it's like you're screaming. And all these similar patterns of like going out and like blowing the family's savings, or like taking everything, going to Vegas, or just packing up and going and just buying a bunch of booze and drugs and going in the woods or something. Like it's all just a symptom of, I think, that like that ignorance of of your true expression of your true self. So that's awesome, guys. Really, really great chat going on here. Robin, did you want to pop in and talk about synchronicity for a second? You sound like you look like you have something to say, because when you introduced yourself earlier, you sound like you're on a pretty high level yourself there.
Well, let's say everybody has a face, eh? Lately, I've been learning some lessons, and I'm still in the process of that. But usually, what I've experienced, especially on my travels, is that synchronicity is what happens once you let go, and once you just let the universe do its thing. Or that's the other possibility: once you've not done the thing that you actually want to do for a long enough time, and then you actually have to do that. So synchronicity for me is mostly, well, let's see if I find a good example. Oh yeah, that's actually a pretty good one. The moment that I let go of trying to find a partner, I found a partner, basically. Now obviously it didn't last, but it's just a general pattern that I've noticed so often at this point. Yeah, what I mean by automatically confronted with it is that it's something that if you ignore it for too long, there's a point at which you can't ignore it anymore. That's when you have this midlife crisis, for example. That's when it hits you. Like you have to. It's basically similar to the wonderful example that Charles Eisenstein made about non-doing, where sometimes a period of non-doing might be the thing that will actually lead you to the answer that you seek. But because you have this idea in your mind that you constantly have to do something, he has this example of a maze. You just keep running around that maze, and you could just keep running and running and running. You're sponsored by the thought of, oh my God, if I stop, then I will never get out. And so I just keep running and running and running until eventually you cannot run anymore, literally, because you're just too exhausted. So you break down, and that's in that period of non-doing is when you actually look around and look at your surroundings, the stuff that you haven't even been seeing because you've been running so much. And then you actually start to see a pattern to the maze, and that's when everything else emerges. It's in these periods of non-doing that we actually find what we actually want to do. And otherwise we're mostly just, well, sponsored by these thoughts, by our environment, basically. And that's what I meant by sometimes if you ignore it for too long, you will have to do it anyway. Like, so either you stop right now, either you actually do look into yourself and submit to this kind of, well, letting go, I guess, and to the universe. And obviously that's an entirely different discussion, where the line is between the predestination and the free will. I mean, we had that. But it's just something that I personally have also found that we can't really evade. And I think everybody has that in their own lives, that if they evade it for too long, it will come to them.
Awesome, man. Very well said. I liked the maze analogy. I can relate to that a lot. And I liked what I picked up most from you that I liked a lot was the kind of almost duality, if you want to call it that, of doing and non-doing. There's like a balance point that I've had experience with where it's like there's weeks where I'll be taking like an incredible amount of action and I'll get a return that's pretty equal to what I put out. There'll be times where I don't put any action in and things still come about. Then there's times where I put tons of action in and get nothing out of it. And then there's like these kind of, like either or, and it's like this fine line that you have to know with yourself where like how much action you have to take versus how much like you can only take so many actions, like you said before. You have to stop and reflect and like either wonder like, am I doing this the right way? Is there a better way to do this? Like like self-correcting type stuff. So yeah, that was really cool, man. Thank you for sharing that. I'm interested to hear what Roman has to say on this topic. He's been just kind of quietly biding, waiting his turn over here.
I'm appreciating all what you said. So yeah, yeah. I wrote some things down like to remind myself of them, of course. So, like I think there's this general view of the world or of the universe you have to have in order to believe in either how do you say, like determinism or free will. That's kind of another topic, but like what kind of view you have on synchronicity. And I think you can think that the world is completely organized, or the universe is completely chaotic, like it's all random or it's all organized. But I think it's like an organized chaos in a way. So there are patterns in the chaos, or actually the chaos exists out of patterns, but only you can recognize and make meaning of those patterns. So and I think no one else should make meaning of those patterns. So if certain things happen in your life, you are the one who can recognize them and use them, or if they're like patterned problems that keep showing up, for example, then you can see it as a sign that you can rise up to that problem and make it a challenge instead of a problem. So that's how I see it. So it's not like everything that happens has meaning inherently, but I think you can use it. For example, when Steve Jobs did his speech, it was like, yeah, and then I connected the dots, right? But I mean, in that moment, he just connected the dots, but he could also have connected them in a different way, right? So it's not, or if he had other dots, he could have connected other dots, right? So I think it's like not, so for example, I went to France, and like as a kid, I went to France and with my parents, and I learned a little bit of French, and so after a while, I grew. I was better in French than my peers, right? Because I just talked to some French people there, and then when I was done with high school, I decided to go to France as an au pair. And in doing that, you could see like, oh, I connected the dots, right? Like, but I don't know. I'm not right now. I'm not really doing anything with my French, but I did realize a dream that I wanted to go to France one day and speak the language fluently. So I think it's very subjective how you want to connect the dots and how do you see the coincidences. I think you make them. Because I think you make the coincidences real in your mind, and that kind of connects to an idea that the human capacity for self-deception is infinite. So, yeah, that was my 2 cents.
Profound, sir. I liked what you were saying while in the chat block on the side here. We were talking about like an organized chaos, or I was almost thinking of like layers of patterns that are kind of all operating at the same time, and we kind of tap into different levels of different layers at any given time, almost like a radio frequency. You're just like in a packet of patterns during a set time period, whatever your, I don't know if you want to believe in emotional resonance or like, you know, vibrational resonance, like you only attract with what you vibrate with and all that stuff. If you want to use that abstract language, it would make sense to like almost think that, you know, you're like just tuned to a certain packet of patterns for a while that we call habits, or, you know. So I think there's definitely a degree of organized chaos, but it's almost like I almost always feel like that's almost like the point of being human, is having like the capacity to experience this stuff, but at the same time know that reality is more than we probably could ever comprehend, let alone, you know, bring down even into the scientific world. When you bring it down into like scientific principles, it's kind of like the way I've always given the analogy. Like, are you guys familiar with like Photoshop at all? Like image quality, like if you have a PDF file or a TIF file, you know how those like really, really high quality images that usually you can like print a big poster with them, and you know the pixels aren't pixelated and it looks nice and clean. I almost think that like reality from a human perspective is like trying to take like the highest TIF image or like a really crisp PDF and then saving it as a JPEG, and how much is lost in that conversion of information from such a high compression to such a low, Roman's laughing his ass off right now, to such a low, you know what I mean, like a frame rate, and it's just like you're losing so much information. We can only share so much and think so much before we can have to kind of just like bask in the amazingness of like just what is like experience, like everything around us, how we tie into relationships with each other, you know, how our thoughts create our experiences, how our habits create our lives, how much control you do have, like Robin said, when you stop and you take a minute and realize certain patterns, like why is this happening? Why do I keep doing this one thing? There has to be a reason for it. So it's almost like this synchronicity. From what I was gathering from everyone, we have this like point of agreement where we agree that it's like an improbable coincidence, which I don't think most would argue with. But then it almost seems like that some of us are agreeing that there seems to be a line where there's like a smaller pattern where it's not just so much improbable coincidence as like synchronicity could literally just be how things happen in general. We take that for granted as a very general term, like even just going out and the way your day unfolds when you have nothing planned, just the people that happen to be around you at that time. If you happen to be at the store at this time, you could be playing a larger role in something else that you're not even aware of. There could be like some melodrama that you happen to walk into the middle of and disrupt, or you might be in the right place at the right time to help someone that's really in health, like that has a flat tire, or you know, just like even the littlest things. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about how reality itself is like way more like lush and vibrant than we could ever really give it credit for, and we're just kind of like blindly, well, no, I don't want to say blindly, but as consciously as possible, like meandering through this reality and trying to make sense of it, and it breeds awesome discussions like this. So that's pretty much my 2 cents on that. Did anyone have anything else to say about synchronicity? Any other ideas pop up? for a moment.
Well, actually, I know I forgot to say something to what Robin said, but I forgot the exact point that I wanted to speak on. It was you spoke about like not in non-doing, right? Like in non-doing, you can find what you need to do, and before that or after that, I forgot. Can you remember? Otherwise, we just go on to the next point. That's fine with me too.
Not really. Sorry.
All right.
It's been such an interesting conversation in what you said. It just it happens. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe another time. Who knows?
All right.
All right, so we will move on to the next
I
topic.
wanted to bring up something real quick. Like you mentioned, like that, like scientifically, it's not explainable, but I think what science is really doing is just catching up to what already is. Like when they thought the world was flat, the world was still round. It's just their perception was the world was flat because of the limited scope of the way to calibrate things. So the way, like Einstein and Nikola Tesla were like looking at quantum physics and quantum theory, and that we're spiritual beings having human experience, and that everything is energy, and physical is a manifestation of energy and vibration. So, and I listened to like Paul Masvidal Cynic talk about this, like I mean, you mentioned that existence is just like that compared to
cosmic scale of like a life of a star is even like a flash, a blink of an eye in cosmic terms.
Exactly, and like what Newton's law of physics was that energy is never lost; it's transferred. So when you leave your body, in this physical, Immortal Technique at the end of the song one, he's like, I'll be one with God, one with you, and everyone else. Like you kind of like your energy becomes like, and we're all generally one, even in our physical existence, but your energy is transferred into a different form when you leave this flash of an existence in the physical realm, and just even with our eyes, like we perceive only visible light, which is like that much.
I know, yeah, it's a crazy sliver. But yeah, that's another good topic too, is how like even as like good and strict and disciplined as science is, it still has so many like holes in it that allow for like bias to like really influence the outcome of something. And that's kind of where like the quantum theory gets to, is like that fine line between when you're being a scientist and when you're part of the experiment, and kind of trying to figure out how many steps back we actually can take without influencing the experiment. And I think it's just a matter of time, honestly, before like the doors get blown wide open on that stuff. It's really just a matter of like cultural acceptance of everything we have is great, but it needs to be expanded upon, and like all the parts that are missing from science will become obvious when, like, this is a whole other topic too. I don't want to get into this too much, but
there's a lot of like financial disincentive for science.
And
with like government considers cannabis to be a Schedule I narcotic, when kids who use cannabis oil that have epilepsy have no more seizures anymore. So there's like
it's like that stigma versus like the science is already showing you that. It does this objectively, this will fix this problem, but because you have a political bias and like an affiliation with something, you are stepping over your bounds of, you're technically almost playing God at that point, because if something can help someone just because your political affiliation doesn't believe in it, or because, you have religious views that prohibit it, it's that like reality versus fantasy type thing where, what can be used to help and heal should be allowed versus, just circumventing all of that stuff. But yeah, why don't we tie that into, actually that's a good flow into the next topic, because we were going to do school as prison, but let's just segue into like the mass media and like mass media and like mass consciousness, and how the idea that lots of people behaving a similar way kind of sets the tone for humanity, and how humanity is kind of moving in one direction right now. We could debate about that direction all day, but like, what are your thoughts on kind of what Alex and I were just saying about how there's things that could be happening, but because of like a political influence or a bias or whatever, there's certain people that are, I won't say conspiracy theory, but pooling their resources and leverage to maintain some sort of like status, or like some sort of like status quo over genuine free research, or someone getting a grant, but because they don't have this, it doesn't count. So like cannabis is a great one. Free energy. There's lots of people out there that are supposedly getting like knocks on the door from the government because they have like an engine that runs on water with no exhaust, and they've got like patents ready, and they get like silence and stuff. I mean, that's all speculation, but what do you guys feel about that? Because that's kind of, when you think about how the world is headed today, and the whole like love and light idea of mass consciousness raising. Do you guys feel that things in general are getting better? Are things getting worse? Do you think that like humanity is becoming more conscious? Do you feel like it's splitting? Like there's a lot of unconscious people going this way and like a conscious movement happening in this direction? Or do you think it's just everything is just screwed and it's always going to be screwed? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely not screwed for all. I would never say that. But something that is quite obvious is it's actually not only political things that hold science back. So, for example, if you're familiar with the work of Rupert Sheldrake.
Yes, Science Set Free.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's this cultural stigma almost in things that are actually scientifically tested to be correct. I mean, there's always a lot of just even scientific conflict from what I remember about the whole free energy debate and everything. But when it comes to things like, I forgot the topic of Rupert Sheldrake's work, but he was basically referring to this, does anyone remember the name of his work? That stuff happens, once something happened, it's a lot easier to happen again.
It's morphic resonance principle.
Morphic resonance, exactly.
Yeah.
And there are actually people, he talked about this in a talk, where he talked to other scientists, and they actually thought the same thing, but they would never say it, because they think, well, but what about the others? Well, what would they think if I would say that? And so these things that are actually tested, there are tests about this, which definitely state that there is something that definitely resembles it. Not, obviously, there's never true evidence in the sense that something is inherently proven, it's just that the theory is more refined. But even though there is there's strong research on this, people are still, I mean, scientists, not just peasants, not just normal people, but the scientists in the fields are still, well, governed by this social stigma, partially, which is a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, which is a lot of that is in line with the whole idea of oneness and, well, synchronicity in the end. But I think it's getting better.
To kind of merge the two topics of mass consciousness and schooling, I think they're kind of interconnected, so we can it ties in together. Like George Carlin said, he needs to make you just dumb enough to smart enough to do the machines and run the paperwork, and then smart or dumb enough to accept the passive slavery that you live under. And I think that schools are kind of a way to, they're almost just like another form of mainstream media. Like all the conservative right-wing nut jobs are all like, oh, it's the liberal schools. They're actually not that liberal. Like, we learn how justifiable the massacre of the indigenous people are, or we learn, American exceptionalism. We don't learn the truth about imperialism. And
I was gonna say imperialism. That's like the one word that they should just like make you wear on a T-shirt in high school. Like, this is what you're gonna be brainwashed with.
Yeah, they don't teach us. Actually, like, if I don't want to say this without quoting who it's from, a British rapper Low-Key. At the beginning of his song, Abomination, says, since 1945, the United States has attempted to overthrow more than 50 foreign governments, and the process has caused the end of life for several million people, and caused many millions more to a life of agony and despair. And to us as exceptional Americans, we don't think that anyone that lives outside of our borders are human beings. So the word million doesn't even fathom us, but one success, and I'm not saying that Robin Williams' death wasn't tragic, but Robin Williams goes across, the globe as like the most tragic thing ever. When, when a bunch of Iraqis die in one day, that's who cares? When we're all one human family, and a life is a life, and we gotta, value whether it's Robin Williams or, someone we don't even know their name, because they don't even say it on TV. We have to treat that life equally, and that's the box they keep us in school. It's just we don't think beyond these constructs that they put on our minds. So they literally like force us to think on a certain superficial level, like left versus right, which is a false paradigm, divide and conquer. So it's definitely, and then obviously other things we brought up like free energy or cannabis. It's like, you're going to go to school, and hey, you, Bobby, you're going to grow up to cure cancer. Now go to doctor school and go work for Pfizer and all that kind of stuff. Well, you get in that, you don't even realize that there's an incentive to not have a cure for cancer because cancer is an industry, or free energy. Like I saw a commercial for ExxonMobil where it's like, we have the brightest of young people joining us and coming up with new energy solutions, as long as it's only petroleum.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. Especially the just how controlled. It's so hard to sound. You pretty much can't not sound like a conspiracy theorist once you do enough research, and you kind of like, even when you're open-minded and you're not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, there's still plenty of stuff out there that is just so like questionable, and like, you know, there's red tape everywhere, and this is like really taboo to talk about. Like, I can't be the only one that like even at least questions this being a possibility, like, because you can never, like Romans, I forget what exactly we said earlier about like the self-deception is endless or infinite or something like that. I think that goes in more dimensions than we admit, not just with ourselves, but like what other people are capable of, and like what their incentives actually are. Because it's so easy to just assume that, you know, everyone's the same, or everyone in general, you know, likes humanity and wants to do good, or there are some people that are just bad. Like, I think the human psyche is so complex and unpredictable that it's like, it's just the amount of humans and conditioning running around all at the same time is just like a wild card, and just it's kind of just like a bull in the china shop. Like, anything could happen at this point. But I think Jamie had something to say, and then Laura had something to say as well, so you guys can go for that.
So I posted on my Facebook, I saw someone had this link of this kid who's famous now as the Apparently Kid. He was on the news for being this like funny 5-year-old kid, and then he went on the Ellen show, and so she's trying to interview him because he talks funny and stuff, and she's saying, so how's kindergarten? He just started kindergarten. And he's talking about how he feels like he's in prison. He's 5 years old, just started kindergarten, says he feels like he's in prison. So I think that's a really interesting, kind of like what's the word? Like an objective type view. I mean, it's his first time in school, and he doesn't think like we do. So I thought that was a really cool interpretation. And then also, just school's not for everybody. Some people really learn well with that type of structured environment, and then there's people like me who didn't do that well in school. Like, I mean, certain years I did, but there were a lot of years that I just wasn't into it, and I didn't do very well, and you know, that doesn't define me because I learn in a more creative way. And I think there's a lot of people like that, a lot of creative people that have a lot of bad memories from school because it just wasn't for them, but yet we're very intelligent people, but we have our intelligence in different areas than the school subjects.
Definitely agreed. That whole idea of school being like a uniform, one-size-fits-all factory for humans has always bothered me. The weird thing is I don't know if anyone else, I'm willing to be the weird guy in the group just by saying this because I feel the energy is so good right now. But I've kind of felt that way ever since I can remember, like even in kindergarten and like first grade. I'm just like, this is like way too systemized for my liking. Like, be here at this time, sit down from now till now, do this now, eat lunch now, go outside for half an hour, come inside, color, take a nap or whatever, go home at 2:30, and then it's just like, I don't know if like in a past life I was like, you know, very similar to how I am now, but it's almost, I feel like I was like thrust into this world and I was like already asking questions by the time I could even like, you know, walk or like think for myself. Like, I have memories of being like incredibly young, like as little as 2 or 3, and just really vivid memories of just like, you know, my parents or being at the park and just like thinking really deeply about like my own body and like looking at my hands and just like really introspective stuff at a young age. Like, I was such a weirdo. But I will let Laura take over. I'll shut my mouth and let her take a moment here to give her 2 cents because she's been very patient.
You're
Thank
not
you
the
for
only
that.
one. Jason.
To go off on what Jamie was saying about the 5-year-old, my nephew actually just started kindergarten, and my sister told me something very interesting about his first day at school, and that the teacher told him to draw a fish, so he decided to draw a fish with 2 tails. And then the teacher said, that's incorrect, and threw it out. And I thought that was shocking. I just was like, you just told him he can't create. Like in the, like in it, like that was the whole thing for me in school. I think a lot of the schools here, it kills your creativity. And then they like mold you into this like kind of like a robot thing, like, it's like elementary school, high school, college, go get a job, do this and do that, and it's like, all right, they just spit you out into the world and just expect you to do it. And then, we hit these crises and when we get older and we're like, oh, we didn't get to do what we love to do because we've been constantly like told we can't. So I just think schools is, unless you really are self-aware, I think it's hard to not be consumed by how the schools and the education system just like, destroys creativity and destroys kind of like being an individual almost. So I don't know, because I went to school too for like forensic psychology. It was a very serious school, and I thought I wanted to do it. And I remember one particular class I had was literally we talked about serial killers for 45 minutes for an hour every day. So I had to analyze a lot of like serious stuff. So there was one moment, and I'll never forget it because the whole class looked at me like I had 3 heads. Like there was one, I don't remember who the serial killer was, but we have to analyze their childhood. And so I actually said, I said, I'm not condoning what he did. I'm not saying what he did was right, but I said at the same time, I feel very bad for a lot of the serial killers. And everybody was like, what? Like, no, we should like kill them all and like throw them in the chambers and like, you know what I mean? So I said, no, I really do. It's like, if you figured out what age they really needed that parent there or that love that they needed, it makes such a difference in somebody's life. So I don't know, that's kind of why I went off on my own path, because I said I don't think I'm for this field because it's so like by the book, and I'm not. So kind of my 2 cents on education. I can go on forever, but I'll stop.
I think we all could rant time on that. I definitely agree. I feel like that school in general and like institutionalized education in particular, whether it's private, public, or however organized by the state or whatever, it's very restricting. It's from a young age you're like in a conditioned society that has like subsets of more conditioning built into it that you get exposed to. So you're like born into a world, shown what's what, then you're shoved into a school where you're still kind of like figuring out the world for yourself at a young age, and then you're told like don't be too creative, don't think too much for yourself, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that, don't do this. And it's almost like you could almost say it's like a giant scam in some sense. It's like you're just kind of brought into this life and like just pushed through, and then by the time like the whole midlife crisis thing, it's kind of like you finally wake up and realize that everything you've done for the last however many years has been someone else's intention, or they're benefiting from your ignorance of yourself pretty much. And it's at this point in society it's hard to discuss these things openly, which is why I'm very grateful for a group such as this, because not only can I voice how I feel about these things, but then there are also people that 1 feel the same way, 2 have had similar experiences, and 3 have something that they can contribute to kind of helping raise mass consciousness, or anyone that watches these videos and feels the same way. It kind of pulls people together in a way of that whole idea of like the unconscious population and the conscious population, if you want to think dualistically. But in general, just the act of discussing these things in a forum such as this makes others feel okay about coming forward and talking about it. It's kind of like that group mentality, like strength in numbers. Like, okay, there's enough people talking about this now. I'm comfortable about discussing these topics, and I think it's really awesome. But yeah, did anyone have any final things to say? We've got about 2 minutes left here on the air. We're going to cap it off at an even hour. Does anyone have any 2 cents / minute wisdom they want to drop before we have about a minute and 30 seconds here?
Film the police. I really like what's going on here in Concord, New Hampshire.
Oh yeah.
You guys don't have an armored vehicle anymore. Thankfully, my town does. Unfortunately.
I saw it, man. It was scary.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess like there are so many ways to change things. First, of course, the intellectual revolution, ditching the mental slavery. But I do think we need to get active. I don't like to use the term politics. I just like, but if we don't get involved, politics will get involved with us, because these politicians are going to stick their armored vehicles and oppress us even more with all this kind of stuff that's going on. So we do need to be able to, and we're pitching our 2 cents the best we can. But I hate to be a self-promoter here, and I don't.
Go for it, man. I'm including the links to
I'm,
everything. Don't worry.
I'm running for mayor of Encinitas, California, the town where I live in, as a non-traditional, just being myself, but obviously being pragmatic, but also radical at the same time. So people can take what I say seriously, but I'm not gonna never ever compromise who you are. Like or like Nietzsche said, if you're fighting monsters, don't ever become a monster in the process. So I think I found a balance, and the website is freeencinitas.org, and I'm just trying to lead by example, and it's a blueprint for others to follow. Actually, speaking of synchronicity, I was tripping acid about the beginning of the new moon month, which is the Islamic calendar is lunar, and there's a lot of spiritual implications around and Amber Lion and Reset.me I was listening to a podcast, and it's like really good to do psychedelics around certain cosmic or spiritual events. So it was like the first sliver of the new moon was appearing. I did the last bit of acid that I had, and all of a sudden that same day, my friend posted this article on the antimedia.org, which blew up this video that I had that I went on local news recently, and it's like over 70,000 hits right now. Like people all around the world, and on the day it was like, this person messaged, and they had like a really cool Alex Gray painting as the picture, and they're like something about like all the cough crimes that all the politicians are aware of, and they're probably talking about Kennedy assassination and 9/11 and all that stuff. Like I know exactly what cough crimes you're speaking of. And it was just like there's so many people that it's like it was just so, and I felt given that you're in more connection to the spiritual realms, you could kind of like feel the awakening via the energy around this planet, and since there was probably sporadic all around the planet of people just seeing that, and people like yes, and and for me it's all about blueprint, giving it to other people. You can never rely on change from one person, from one demagogic politician. It's all of us working together, even just at the point of ejecting yourself from mental slavery. That in itself is enough change to change the world, because that means they don't own you. And that's better for your health, because with going into schooling and all that kind of stuff like that, they kind of train you to be submitted to authority, and it's really negative on your health, your personal health, your actually physical health, because we talk about how vibrations affect things. Like the study on water, where negative vibrations make the molecular structure of water all chaotic, and positive make it really beautiful. It literally affects our health to be negative and stuck in this thing, with authority. It affects the way we interact with each other. It makes our lives not up to our full potential, because we're following trends instead of being ourselves and being happy the way we are, and not caring about what other people judge us. Finding our true selves, being peaceful and loving and harmonic with other people. And so it's whether it's the political realm or other realms, life realm, spiritual realm, health realm, it is all the same philosophy that keeps us down. Whereas we could be living much more happier, harmonious lives, hemp farming and producing our own cannabis oil to treat our ailments. And for anybody watching it, highly recommend phoenixtears.ca, or go on YouTube and watch the documentary Run from the Cure by Rick Simpson. By the way, cannabis oil is 95% plus THC, so the best way to cure your ailments.
All right, man, awesome stuff. I will be including all of the links that Alex just brought up, as well as links to any of the books we discussed or brought up, or resources that we mentioned. We went a little bit over the hour, which is fine. It's always good to stretch it a bit if someone has something good to say. So we are going to wrap up this week by thanking our guests. I'm going to thank everyone for taking the time to join us, everyone that's watching this, sharing it. If you could do me a favor and crush the subscribe button below, whichever side of the screen it's on, and share this video, post it to Facebook. Leave comments on the official Concepts of Consciousness Facebook page with the link below, and join the group. Let us know your 2 cents. Do you want to come and talk with us on a chat one week? That'd be awesome. Let us know. Again, real quick thank you to the Universal Beat Clothing for their support and ExpandedConsciousness.com for their support as always. And we will see you guys next week with more exciting concepts of consciousness. Have a good one.